morning, everybody. It is a beautiful, beautiful morning in Colorado Springs, but we are recording this earlier in the week. It's not Sunday morning here. We're doing it earlier in the week, getting ready for Sunday here. Most of you know that we have started the Storehouse on Seton Place, which is the house church ministry of St. James Church. And so we meet at 10 o'clock on Sunday mornings here at the house, and we use our whole basement. It's just absolutely phenomenal. And then it's all friends. We know one another. We know each other's kids. The relational dynamic is powerful. And this is a Wednesday morning. We just finished our Zoom meeting, which you're always welcome to join us on Zoom. It's Zoom at meeting ID number 719-338-0079. We talk about the scriptures together, and it's an hour during 10 o'clock Mountain Time. We meet for an hour and discuss scriptures that day. It's just fabulous. People from around the country join us. It's just a handful of people, and we have a great, great time together. And then on Wednesday nights, we have our Bible study here in the basement of our house. So because of that, we found out our steps were uneven. So you may hear there's a crew out there removing the concrete steps and rebuilding that. And the patio in our backyard wasn't quite big enough for our Bible study. And some Sunday mornings, we want to meet out there. And there's a park across the street that we're going to use some Sunday mornings. This is awesome. This is the pinnacle of my life. And so we are having the greatest time. Now, granted, we don't have all the bells and whistles. We don't have all the big youth groups and everything. There are churches all around us that have those things, and we're for all of them. But I am 65 years old, and so you just have to put up with my stage of life. And so anyway, I want to tell you a few stories. I realized a few weeks ago, maybe a few months ago, that I didn't have hardly any exposure to unsaved people or lost people or non-church people. And so because of that, I started driving for Lyft. And so I drive for Lyft, and I just want to tell you something about that, because this morning in the Zoom Bible study, we studied Proverbs 18. Proverbs 18 has verses in it like verse number 1, unfriendly people care only about themselves. They lash out at common sense. It's verses like, fools have no interest in understanding. They only want to air their own opinions. It has verses like verse 8, rumors are dainty morsels that sink deep into one's heart. Verse 7, backing up one, the mouths of fools are their ruin. They trap themselves with their lips. Verse 6, fools' words get them into constant quarrels. They're asking for a beating, and we were reminded of how they handle situations in African villages and in small towns in America, in contrast to in our big towns where we have a proliferation of the influence of Twitter and Facebook and television and radio, and people are awful toward one another increasingly. And we talked about how with everything going on in the world, we are all still concerned about Britney Spears' feelings every day and how Johnny Depp is doing in his divorce trial. I mean, gee whiz, what's going on in our world? In Proverbs 18, it says things like spouting off before listening to the facts is both shameful and foolish, where in this generation, since we don't really know one another face to face, which is why we're doing the house church, people say things without knowing the facts, and they intentionally draw a crowd by being rude. Verse 19, an offended friend is harder to win back than a fortified city. Arguments separate friends like a gate locked with bars. However, in verse 20, wise words satisfy like a good meal. The right words bring satisfaction. I want to tell you 3 stories real quick about me driving recently. I'm going to change some of this just a little bit for the protection of people, but I picked up a person that she was a student up at UCCS, and I asked her what she was, if she was a student, and she said yes, and she named she was getting her master's degree in such and such a. I don't want to tell you too much. I don't want any of you to identify her, but she was getting her master's degree. And I said, well, what are you going to do after you graduate? And she said, oh, I'm going to teach. And I said, have you ever thought about just using your newfound knowledge and wisdom in the workforce for 5 or 10 years before you go back to teach? So your teaching would have a little more practical application. And she said, oh, I hadn't thought about that. And we talked about that a little bit. And then as we got closer to the school, I said, well, do you do any work around the school, or are you just a student? Are you on scholarship? How's it working? And she said, no, I work as a counselor at the school, and for students that are having difficulty in their home life. And I said, well, that's very interesting. And I said, are you from a healthy home or from a struggling home, or tell me what your background is? And she said, oh, I had a horrible home life growing up, and it's horrible. And now I live in an apartment with a whole bunch of other students, and the relationships are bad. And so she described that. And I said, well, when you're helping students that are dealing with a difficult home life, how do you know the difference between what's helpful and what's harmful in those relationships? Do you take classes on marriage and family, or do you take classes on relationships or whatever? She said, no, I don't take any of those classes. I'm in my master's study program, so I focus on my primary studies. And she said, so as for whether I'm giving them counsel that's helpful or not, I hadn't thought about that. And so anyway, we went on a little bit, and then she said, well, I also volunteer to provide support for the LGBTQ plus community, to provide support for them. And I said, oh, that is wonderful. And I said, now, so have you, in reflecting on your other role here at the school, do you ever talk with them about behaviors or words or attitudes that they might have that makes their situation even more difficult than it needs to be? And how do you sort out what you're supportive of? And she said, oh, I don't. I said, she said, I'm supportive of them. And so whatever they feel is right or want to do, I support them. And I said, well, could you possibly be supporting things that they do or say or whatever that actually causes more problems than they need to face as students going through the process they're going through? And she said, no, my job is to provide support. And I said, well, could you be hurting them by being supportive of things that are just foolish? And she said, oh, I hadn't thought about that. And so anyway, I thanked her for her work up at the university and for the faithfulness that she's showing and everything like that. And we had a wonderful parting of the ways. The other day, I went over to the big Amazon building here in town and picked up a young man. He was probably in his mid-20s, maybe about 30. And I noticed his name was, and by the way, if you know this guy, please don't bring this up, but because I am going to use specifics here. I noticed he identified himself on the Lyft app as Lagos. Well, I've been to Lagos many times, Lagos, Nigeria, and I expected to pick up a man from either Lagos or whose family was from Lagos or something like that. And I picked up a guy that was obviously very, very American, white guy, blonde-headed, and all that. And so I asked him why he uses the name Lagos, and that was his screen name that he uses. And he explained to me in detail why he uses his screen name. And as we were driving along, he said, you know, it's so pleasant talking to you, and we're enjoying one another so much, I think I will tell you what my real name is. And I said, sure. And he said, well, my mother named me at birth Lucifer. And I said, Lucifer, now that's interesting. Is she aware of Lucifer in the Bible? And he said, well, so much so that the hospital wouldn't let her name me Lucifer. So she named me, on my birth certificate, she named me Cain from Cain and Abel. Cain killed Abel. And so I said, yeah. I said, why that? And he explained it and explained the Lucifer thing and what he's faced with that and how that's gone for him. And I asked him about his mother and we had quite a conversation. And then when I got home, or when I got to his house, he leaned in the window to thank me for the conversation, for the drive. And I said, hey, I just want you to know I'm sorry that you've had to go through this because of your mom's choices. And he said, he's an agnostic. And he said that he hoped he got me again as a driver so that we could continue the conversation. And I thought about some of these verses that we just talked about, how fools' words get them into constant quarrels. They're asking for a beating. That's verse 6. 7, the mouths of fools are their ruin. They trap themselves with their lips. And thought about the guy I picked up this morning. This morning I went out and just felt a nudge to go out and drive a little bit. And I ended up picking up a guy down here at the county jail who'd been incarcerated for 9 years for an armed robbery where he got $116 at a grocery store. And he's been in for 9 years. And today I picked him up and we put in the back of my car his bicycle and several big duffel bags and several boxes of his stuff. It was all his stuff that he's accumulated for 9 years. And I took him to a sober living home where you can live in them cheaply. And on the way home, I told the guy, I asked him if he had any family left. No, they're all gone. Any friends? No. And I asked him, does anybody love you? And he said, no. And I said, well, somebody is praying for you because I came to pick you up this morning and I have a word for you. And he said, yeah. And I said, are you a believer? And he said, I'm a cautious believer. I'm scared to death. I believe the Bible and I believe in Jesus, but I'm scared of religious people. I said, I'm a believer too. And I said, I am your friend. I'll never be your enemy. And I am now your advocate. I said, have you been to the mountains? And he said, not for 9 years. And I said, I'll take you to the mountains if you want me to. I've got ATVs. I'll take you riding if you want me to. If you need some cash, I'll help you. If you want to go to a Bible study where nobody will judge you, I'll provide that for you. If you want to go to a little church service in the basement of my house that only my friends are there, and it's by invitation because it's in our house, you're welcome if you're comfortable with that. But if you're uncomfortable with that, I will never pressure you and I'll never do anything with strings attached. You're perfectly free to call me if you'd like, and you're perfectly free to never communicate with me if you like. But I want to teach you one thing. The definition of love is living for the good of the other, and I'm willing to live for your good. And I said, you need a break today. And it is God that sent me to pick you up on this 9th anniversary of your incarceration. And you're getting out. If I didn't have a Zoom Bible study to lead in a little bit, I'd take you to the best breakfast you've ever had in 9 years. And I said, I am for you 100%. No matter what you choose from this day forward, I will never be against you. And I'd been looking at these verses in Proverbs 18, and I just thought, I'm 65, Gail's 65. Most of the people in our church are the most committed, faithful, loyal, loving, delightful people I've ever known in my life. And all we are devoted to is helping people being better off. And when I talk to these different people, now, of course, I talk to delightful people as well as people that are struggling and things in this new ministry the Lord has me involved with Lyft. And I picked up a guy the other day I wanted to tell you about. he got in and he asked me, I told him I was retired, and he asked me what I retired from. And I told him, and he said, well, I'm a Satanist. And he said, I ride with Lyft to try to convert Lyft drivers to Satanism. And he told me the story about how he used to play. He's a musician. He has a very successful restaurant downtown with live music. And he said he played in church bands up until he was 15. And at 15 years old, he went to a rave, and they gave him, he was 15, they gave him drugs there and then had sex with him there. And he's increasingly gotten involved with Satanism ever since. And now he's a committed Satanist trying to win people to Satanism. So we had a very interesting conversation. And he too was hoping, the answers I gave him, he said, nobody's ever answered these questions like this. And I said, well, I haven't told you my background, but I probably have a different background than most of the people that drive for Lyft. And so I just want you to know that I'm for you, and that I'm for the kingdom of God. And that some of you may hear negative things about me. I don't care. Some of you may hear positive things about me. I like that. But I want you to know that my commitment is to the scriptures and the Lord Jesus Christ, and I will never knowingly violate that. And I love the position the Lord has placed me in. He's taken what the devil meant for bad, and he's changed it into some wonderful things. So I'll just tell you that to tell you that's enough for today. And it's been great talking with you, and hope to see you again soon. Bye-bye.